out in the field. You can see a white PVC pipe sticking out in the distance there. They're about 4 inches in diameter, about 5 feet tall. Teams had to go out, and this year they had to actually find them. We didn't tell them the general areas where the markers were. They had to go out, and it was basically a scavenger hunt and come back with GPS coordinates, and that's GPS coordinates in all 3 dimensions. So you can see Iowa State working out in the field at a distance here, and this is their kill switch guy right there. And this is another shot of Oregon State Rover right here, and you can see one of the markers way up high, and you can see another one way out in the distance there off on the right. Now you're looking at the shot here, and you think, okay, we're going to be doing this mainly through cameras, various other remote sensing apparatus. Not Oregon State. We're just going to drive to everything. And their rover was actually good enough. They were able to get pretty close to most of the markers just by driving. It was pretty impressive just going for the straight muscle approach that they did. But again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's multiple ways of solving the problem. That's one of the great things, seeing some of the ingenuity that comes out. But it was the Canadians that really stood out in this event. University of Waterloo and York University tied for first, followed by Michigan, which is fitting because I think they're the closest American team to the Canadian border. So there's something about that Toronto, Detroit, Ann Arbor loop there. The teams really did well in this event. Apparently they have better camera systems there. The sample return test. This is one of the tests that I think really sets URC apart. There are a lot of robotics competitions out there, and they really focus on the engineering performance of the rovers. It's not always about making the engineers happy, though. Yes, I'm an engineer. We like to be happy. We like to do really cool things and show everything off. But especially when we're looking at Mars exploration, and some of the early missions are going to be out there, there are a lot of exploration-related goals, but it's really the scientific exploration that's going to drive the mission. It's going to be the science requirements and satisfying the scientists, because success at the end of the day is going to get measured by the number of academic papers that get published. And so you have to, if you can use the rovers to further enable the astronauts and the remote science team that's back on Earth, that's really something critical. So for this task here, teams have to actually go out into the field, and we don't give them set requirements because science is an unbounded problem. So we go out there, we know we're interested in signs of possible extremophile, signs of possible microbial life. This past spring was incredibly wet and rainy out at Mars Desert Research Station and really southern Utah in general. I've never seen so much plant life in the middle of the most barren stretch of desert in my entire life. There were plants everywhere, but we told the teams, you bring us back a plant and you're dead. We're looking for the small microbes, the extremophiles. So you have to bring back a sample between 25 grams and 250 grams. Bring it back, and you can analyze it when it comes back, but you only have a 30-minute window to analyze all of your data because everything's happening fast on Mars. The next task is always right around the corner. So you got to quickly go through everything, and then you have to give a field brief to the judges. You have to explain the site that you chose, why you decided to dig or collect a rock where you did, why that was the right sample to bring back, and then you have to discuss the scientific merits of it. So here you're taking the engineers and really making them work with the scientists, understand what the scientists need, and the scientists have to be able to communicate their needs to the engineers and work as a big, happy team. Oregon State and the Magma team really were just absolutely exceptional in this area. Oregon State had a tremendous scientist, worked very closely with the team, and that really showed. BYU also had a really strong showing. Now everyone's favorite, the astronaut rescue mission. There's an astronaut stranded out in the field. You can see one of our MDRS suits lying out there. There's nobody in it, I'll assure you all of that. There's no distressed astronaut, although laying out there in the heat for 8 hours probably would have created a distressed astronaut. But we give them a box. This astronaut has about 40 minutes left before the unfortunate occurs. But there's going to be a slope somewhere in there. They've got about 20 minutes before they start to get in really bad shape. So if you can find them and bring this container to them within 20 minutes, you get the full 100 points. Everything between 20 and 40 minutes, the points start to drop off bit by bit. And if it's after 40 minutes, well, the unfortunate reality set in there, and well, in this case, you don't get the points. You see the BYU team here as they're getting ready to go out into the field. BYU really had a great rover, handled the terrain very well, but this is one of those things where the operator mindset comes into play. They went out on the wrong bearing. They weren't too far off, but because they didn't have an effective search pattern, they were never able to get around to where the rover or to where the astronaut was. And they really had a vehicle that performed well enough. If they had the right search pattern, they really probably would have found the astronaut. So you can see some of the action shots here, and they really handled terrain pretty well. You see the University of Waterloo here as it's going out into the field. And this is after it went out into the field. One thing that is put into the rules of URC, if a rover breaks down into the field, if you lose communications during the event, you can take a point penalty, go out, grab the rover, you got to carry it because the clock's still running, sprint back to the base tent, make any adjustments that you need to on the rover, and then you can send it back out from the start gate. But it's a time penalty, and you lose the distance that you traveled out into the field, so the teams really have to try to avoid. And you see them scrambling here. This is while the clock is still running, scrambling, trying to get everything fixed at the very last second. Here you can see York. York, they had a great rover, but they were also plagued by some of the search pattern issues. And it was one of our judges, our guest judge from Task Inc. was a former Navy fighter pilot, and he talked to the teams a lot about the search patterns that the fighter pilots have to do when they're practicing down pilot missions. And there was a lot of cross-applicability there, and this was a good experience for the teams to get some operational insight into a new domain. York University here, they never were able to find the astronaut. They were not too far away, but they were stuck on a bearing and never really got off of the area they were. You can see them driving around here. Again, this is sped up as well, but you can see how well they handled the terrain. They really had a strong rover that was very robust, and it held up throughout the competition. That's a big thing, is rovers are always going to be breaking down. Things are going to be difficult, but teams that have a well-tested rover that's reliable can survive throughout the competition, even if they have to do some last-minute fixes. Those are the teams that really have a lot of success. York, they had some trouble in this task, but had a great performance all around. You can see Michigan's team right here. Michigan actually was a latecomer in the competition. They emailed me in January, and they were just putting their team together. So most teams had a full academic year. Michigan had half an academic year and was still able to field a rover out of the competition, which I was very impressed with. And of course, you can see their bumper sticker here by their vehicle is a Mars rover. I think we all need one of those. And the Magma team here heading out into the field. Now this shot right here, it's hard to tell. You can see their rover there, that little dot right there, that's the astronaut. They are basically driving straight towards it. But I was pointing out their camera before in the equipment servicing task. They tended to point it down, so their field of view kind of stopped right out here. They weren't looking out to the horizon line, otherwise they would have seen the astronaut. And actually, they drove right about here on a straight line. They passed the astronaut 4 meters away. The astronaut was on their right. Their camera was pointing left. Drove straight by it and lost 100 points just like that. And you can see here, this is where they ended up. They turned around when they got to the far left on that last shot. You can see where they ended up here, and they were right in range of the astronaut. They lost communications here, so the run ended. You can see the astronaut right there. They were on the right sight lines, but again, the camera was pointed just a little too low. So at the end of this event, Oregon State, you'll see some of the video from them when Florian talks. They came in first with 100 points, and York Magma team, University of Waterloo, got 15 points based on how far they were able to get out into the field, the progress they were able to make. So after the dust settled, I have to say this is probably my favorite part of URC, seeing all the teams coming together at the very end for the barbecue. And you can see teams from all the different schools here sitting around. It's as if they're one big team. They've been through the war together, and a lot of the camaraderie they build. They're competing, but at the same time, there's a lot of mutual respect that goes on. So it's really great to see the teams coming together at the end. and even playing with each other's rover systems. So you can see one of the